Hey, game makers. Game dev. Okay, so last time got some falling in, we got some coyote time, a variable jump height. I'll be the first to admit it doesn't feel great, but I don't want to worry too much about like tuning everything because as soon as possible, I'd like to get back to building something that looks like a game and then let that sort of inform how I tune this and how this should. So I don't want to get too deep into the weeds on messing with physics and stuff like that. But one thing that I have been lamenting is my controls. Uh, got the arrow keys and the space bar. I'm often got my hand on the mouse when I play to run the game, or uh, so I'd like to get some different controls as well as more sophisticated. So let's start with that. I'm going to bring in one of my newer assets, recording. It's called Complete Control, and it's a way of setting up controller configs, multiple configurations, listening to different types of controls. It does all sorts of cool stuff. Uh, that being said, it's pretty young. TrueState I've been using in some form or another for I don't know 5 or 6 years. Uh, this is brand new. So if we're gonna find bugs with anything, it's gonna be with this. If I'm gonna not remember how to use it, going to happen here, not so much with other assets like TrueState or Retro Palette Swapper. So so let's bring it in. Uh, yeah. Um, get to do that. Hold on. Control right into here. One of these days, we'll organize this mess over here. Today is not that day. So this is use controls. Pay no attention to the man behind the script. It's complicated. That's okay. We don't need to look at it. So let's go back to our player. Let's set up our controls. Right where we got that right. There's our keys. Here's our keys. So complete control works in a kind of a weird way. I've got an article up on my website about the hook pattern. TrueState uses the hook pattern, so you can see it says use TrueState and it returns a struct, and that struct has all the fancy stuff that TrueState is capable of. Use controls does the same thing. So I can say controls equals use complete controls, and it's asking for a config array, which gamepad slot I want to. So we're going to give it a config of some sort, and I'm going to be listening. So what's a config? So with complete control, you can set up a gamepad and a keyboard mouse config for anything. So let's just get that working. If I can remember how to use it. It's sad when you have to refer to like your own documentation that you wrote for your own code, but yeah, that happens sometimes. That's why we write it. I'll admit, I sometimes go back and watch my old tutorials. I don't remember how to calculate aspect ratios, and I'll just go back and watch that video again, and it is station. Right. Okay, so we have to build a control scheme for each action that we want to use. So I need to move and I need to jump. Those are like my two things that I can do. So I'm going to say move keyboard. Keyboard, there's going to be a couple of ways to do that. So that's going to be an array. And I'm going to say new arrow keys. Right is right, is VK up, left is VK left, down is VK. And I also want to use ASDW as, so right, W is up, A is left, S is down. Perfect. So there's my keyboard move. I have move gamepad equals, and this is just going to be one thing in here. New D-pad. So GP pad R, GP pad up, pad L, and GP pad. And I could do analog stick as well. In fact, I will. I don't know if we'll keep analog stick moving, but analog stick, I'm going to do GP axis left horizontal and GP axis left vertical. Okay, so there we go. So there's our movement bindings. Now we need jump. So I'm going to say jump keyboard, 2 buttons. New key, capital K, going to be VK space, and new mouse button, and be left. So I can jump with the space bar or the left mouse button. Jump gamepad equals, and say new add button, gamepad, space, a button on my Xbox controller. So there we go. So this is my configuration for keyboard and gamepad for move and jump. Now I need to group them into a config. So a configuration is going to be for each action that your gamepad input, your controller config is controlling, what are the inputs you want to support. If you think about a remap config screen, right, you're scrolling down, it'll say jump is this button, move left and right is this button, attack is this button, heavy attack is this button. So I'm going to define my controls in that context. So my config is going to be an array of these actions I can take. So move, I would create a new input for move, and that name is important, referencing that as a variable later. So move, and then it's going to be an input type of directional, so my 4-way directional inputs. Say my keyboard is move keyboard, and my gamepad is move gamepad. And we just follow the same pattern for jump. So an input type button, jump keyboard, and jump. Okay. Now, assuming I did that all right, big, and that's going to give me. I don't need key left, key right, or key jump anymore. Instead, here I'm just going to say controls.update. Now I should know if controls.move.right held and controls.move.left.held go. More or less the same way. More or less. I guess we'll see. One controls got in here. Yep. So now I need deal with jumping. States. Just work on idle right now. Okay, so this is, are you holding left or are you holding right? I suppose it's fine. Controls dot move dot left dot held. Controls dot move dot right dot held. Something walk event. Walk state. Opposite of that. And I'll probably make that more in some way in the future. You jump there. Might as well. Controls.jump.pressed. Oh. Jump.pressed. We're jumping. Jump. Say, so jump not controls.jump.held. Jump.held. Controls.jump.held. Okay, so I think that's, to be honest, that's unlikely to work. A lot of code. Let's see. Okay, arrow keys. Okay, arrow keys good, and I'm still walking and stopping, and that's cool. Spacebar. Okay, we're still jumping. Sort of. That's a problem. ASDW. Hey, that's working. And mouse click. Okay, same problem as the spacebar, so that's something to look into. What about my gamepad? Controller here, left on the D-pad, left on the right on the D-pad. Pad A, same issue. Left on the analog stick, right on the analog stick. Cool. So mostly worked. Let's see what's going on with the jump. Okay, so I let go of button. If not, controls.jump held. So holding controls, then not controls.jump held. Oh, so this is bad. So whenever you see this, I didn't catch this last time. Whenever you see a mix of and or, we need to, right, because it's really ambiguous. Is it not has not let go of jump and not controlled jump held, or against while vert, or is it grouped the other way where it's like has it let go of jump and one or the other, right? So you never. This is a very ambiguous Boolean logic thing I've set up here. So whenever you've got a mix of ands and ors, you're going to need parentheses to. So for this logic, really care that like this doesn't matter. Like we don't need to run this if we've already set this to true. So that logic is what really rules this entire block of code. So if that is, so if we haven't let go of jump yet, and either of these things happen, and set that. All right. So I don't think that fixed my problem because we would have seen that if that was a problem before bringing it full set. What did I break? Might be a bug with complete control, which would be great. Find those as often as possible. So try this again. run in debug mode. It seems like her state is switching immediately because she's like, sprite is changing and then she's just standing there. So to confirm that, let's use another cool thing that TrueState has. Our draw, let's add a draw GUI. I lean into it. I know it annoys people. That's why I do it. That's why I say it. Okay, so in the draw, do behavior dot draw history. This takes a argument 10 and 50. My display stuff is, oh, actually, let's do it in the right hand corner. Blue width minus 10, 0, and black, all good. Set alignment, font align. Give me the option. Huh. I wonder if this will even work. That won't work. Oh, it doesn't care. I'm curious. History. I don't know if I've ever tried to put this in the top. Nope. Okay, fine. Fine. Put it in the left corner underneath for display stuff. Or you know what? Honestly, we don't even need the display stuff anymore. Our display is working great. So we'll just go into turn on display. Let's see if that works. Really? Expecting that. X and Y. Oh, do I not default X and Y? Okay, fine. Thought I did. Whatever. Do that with Playwright All Specs has a deep. Okay, we could see walk, idle, jump. Yeah, so she's going back to idle. So this is the cool thing about using a finite state machine, true state or not. This is the whole idea. I know that the problem is when I hit jump, she is immediately going back to idle. It means I know exactly where this code is. So I can go right to Logic Player, or to jump, and boom, this is happening. That's the only reason that we would be going back to state idle is on ground set to. So let's prove that real fast. Debug mode again. Got my breakpoint there. Jumped immediately on ground. Now, how I didn't discover this, or how this didn't show up last time, I'm not 100% sure. But we need to go qualify our on-ground logic, which is just making it even less elegant. Super thrilled about, but have an idea of how to fix it. So there's our on-ground. Let's make sure that our v-speed is positive, right? Our v-speed is a negative value plus grav. It's still going to be negative. We're going up. Then we're probably not on ground. So I'm going to say on ground is v-speed is greater than or equal to 0 and tile meeting x, y. So if we're going, we have to be going down. Otherwise, we're not on the grid. really surprised this didn't show up, or maybe I just didn't notice. I don't know. Let's run debug mode again. We still got our breakpoint. Not hit it this time. Oh, interesting. So this is kind of an order of operations thing. See, ran our state, jumped, and the jump didn't happen immediately, right? So it started to do all this sort of stuff, and it's like, well, your V speed is still 0 because you're on the ground, and so you 0, you're on ground, and we come back through here. The next step says, all right, do this event that is already set our V speed to jump strength, which is a negative value, and that is going to start moving us, but we've already set ourselves to on ground is already true. So here's what I like to do. I know a lot of people do this. I've got it right now. And I'm not honestly a fan. And there's a number of reasons that I like the way I've got it right now. And this is actually a really good example. So let's stop this. Okay, so in my step event, I listen to controls and then update like my face direction and stuff like that. And I run my step event, I run my state code, and then I update my speed based on my controls, which all of this is kind of line physics, movement. So this is all outside of the state, but really I want to do this and then be able to respond to it. What happens when I hit the ground? This. What happens when I hit the ceiling? Do this. What happens when I run up against the wall? Do this. And I want my state to be able to control that, respond to it instantly. So we're going to abstract this. We're going to have a movement and collision function method, so a function defined on this object. Let's extract this first. Put that event. Just like we did with draw self, we're just going to say move and collide equals function. Boom. H speed, it's going to be speed, it's going to control everything from. Now I am not call this in the step event. It is now going to live my step, my state. So this we'll let him stay for now, but there's a good chance we'll come back and move that guy somewhere else eventually. Like, so I really like it when my state, my object step event is like read controls, execute state. Only other thing I need to put in there is freezing for like hit stops and pausing off things like which we will get to. I do plan on implementing. It's a huge difference, and if you haven't watched the Sakurai video on that topic, it's awesome. It's very important. So I will be doing it. I have some reason to hit stop. So we'll leave this for now, and let's go into our states. So idle, do I need movement and collision in idle? Technically, no. But I'm gonna have it. I'm gonna call it anyway. In other games, in other projects, I have done it in here because you can be just standing there on a platform or on a conveyor belt of some sort, or something, a wind could be blowing you around, and you're just standing there, but it's still moving, and you still have to run into walls and appropriately. So yes, I call it here. Technically, it's not going to do it. So, but it might at some point. Just experience is telling me I'm going to put it there then. Walk, we definitely want it there. So it's going to be the first thing I do. Jump, definitely moving, colliding there. Right at the top there. And fall. As well. So now, since movement and collide is being updated in the step, we will know instantly whether we are on the ground. This updates it right there. So if I were to move this down here, we'd kind of have the same problem. Well, if I were to call this down here, we'd be having the exact same problem. But I can control the order of operations. I can guarantee that we do the calculations, then we check whether we're on the ground. So I think that's all we really needed to do. So we'll run debug mode in case I screwed up somewhere, but hopefully our variable jump height stuff is broke everything. Oh, right. That's why I need to bring this is important. Okay, well, good. Keep my step event nice and clean. Create event's a mess, but we'll get to that as well. There's lots of organization to do, but I'm not too concerned with that right now. Okay. There we go. Ooh. And we hit our breakpoint. Boom. Right when we wanted to. Continue. There we go. Now I can control it with ASDW, click the mouse button, and exactly the same. Pick up my controller, keypad. Oh, fall off the ledge, and we broke. Oh, right. I didn't fix that. So, got our controls.jump.pressed. There we go. This is why I always run a debug, by the way. I don't like reading error messages, and I know it goes to UW. I've hung out in help channels on the GM Discord and seeing how many people are like, I get this error message. Yeah, well, read the error message. It says that variable doesn't exist. Yes, it does. No, messages don't lie to you. Don't. So if you run in debug mode, you don't have to read or listen to it. It'll show you right where the problem is. So get in the habit of running debug mode. It's just the way to go. So there we go. So I can walk off that. Stuck. She's great. That's exactly what I wanted to happen. All right. So now we've got control set up. We've moved our movement collision stuff into its own function on the object itself. Before I wrap this video up, let's talk about that for a second. Why did I move function into the create event of my player instead of into a script resource? And for me, the rule is how many blue variables are in your function, right? I reference h speed or h speed, v speed, against wall, h speed remaining. All of this stuff is on ground. All of these blue variables are in. The more blue variables, the more it should be method. And in fact, flip that around. If it has any blue variables, it should not be script. Green variables, sure, because we can guarantee that every single object in GameMaker that you have in your GameMaker project, every single object has every single green variable. That's great. But this object runs movement and collision, and it works because I expect it to have access to controls. I expect it to have a move on those controls. I expect it to have face direction, it's H speed, against wall. All of these variables are expected to be here. So if I was going to move this into its own function, script resource, and make it globally available for any function or any object to try and call, if I went into my object camera and said move and collide, it would blow up because it doesn't have any of this stuff. So it doesn't make any sense for it to be defined in a scope that it couldn't be used by anyone who has access to the scope. This makes a bit more sense in other languages that are spaces and are better scope, have better scope control than GameMaker does, but it's a good habit to get into. When I start, organizing this over here and bringing in more and more scripts, you'll notice that I make very few exceptions. The first one, which you may already be calling me out on, is states, right? And I try and make it very clear that these scripts, these script resources, are specific to a player. In fact, I keep the same naming convention that I would for a built-in, a find method, lowercase, camel casing. Whereas most of my scripts, like display write all specs and use complete control, use true state, they're written the same way. They're named using the same naming convention as other built-in GameMaker draw sprite, meeting, all of those, because these functions are usable and accessible by every single object project. So as soon as you start saying, oh, well, this script only usable by this object or this object type, very heavily consider why you were putting it or in a script resource instead of defining it relative to object that's just some advice from me. That's the way I'm doing things as of right now. I say at the beginning, at the beginning of the video, the older this video gets, the less likely I am to agree with myself. So that is my current stance on the topic, but future updates to or just my own growth and experience may change that. So what are we doing next? Well, we need more of a game. We've got a character who jumps. We've got heat and goal conditions that we're not really using right now. We turned it off as we were working with the jumping physics. As it is a Metroidvania, it might be interesting to get room transitions in. We've got the basic fade in, but moving a character from room is a lot more complicated and something that a lot of people struggle with. So it might be interesting to get to that sooner rather than later. And we don't really have anything that stands in the way of our character besides death pits, things that kill the player instantly, and instant deaths aren't fun. I'm not really aiming for I want to be the guy style platforming here. I want something to be a little bit more chill, a little bit more. As I said earlier, it's a Metroidvania, but heavier on the Metroid, less on the Vania. So less combat focused, more exploration and platforming focused, and not as punishing. So no like infinite drop or no death pits. There's no death pits, right? You fall into lava and like, oh, better get out of it before you burn down. If you don't have the gravity suit or what. So that will be that'll be something. We'll have to add some sort of like maybe zooms, like Metroid has little wall crawlies, some even just some spikes on the ground, just some hazards to speed our players' progress. Then we can start building out tools to get around those and start making decisions on how we want this game to feel and how we want a player to think about what they have available to them, what tools they have available, how they approach problems. So keep evolving. Time.